Good evening. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources to hopefully help improve your life. I'm Stu Reid, and here's my co-host, Dave Burstein. Hey, Dave.
Hello.
And we've got a very special guest. He's been on the show probably over a year ago, but I just want to reintroduce him. He's quite a luminary. Martin Cooper is a pioneer in the wireless industry, an inventor, entrepreneur, executive, and author. He's the author of Cutting the Cord, published this past January 2021. Marty believed that cellular phones should be an extension of its owner, that a telephone number represented that owner, not a place, not a desk, not a home, but a person. What a concept. Cooper conceived of the portable cellular phone and led the team at Motorola that created the first phone in 1973. He made the first public cell phone call on April 3rd, 1973. Marty has contributed to every significant advancement in wireless communications technology for over 60 years. Cooper lives with his wife, Arlene, in Del Mar, California. He has 2 children, 4 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. God bless. He's passionate about staying mobile and healthy and continuing to learn every day, and promotes the effective use of radio spectrum to serve the positive needs of humanity. Marty, welcome to Community and Technology.
Thank you for the nice introduction, Stu, and thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Let me add something to the introduction. Marty, tell us a little bit about the work your wife has done.
Oh, that would take you the whole hour, Stu. My wife is a dynamo, and she's working very hard. She is a serial entrepreneur, has started a bunch of companies. The most one that you might have heard of, she invented the jitterbug phone, which was a phone for people who want simplicity. And that phone was called the jitterbug, as I just said. The company was called Great Call, and Great Call is now a part of Best Buy. And you might, I don't think either of you saw the Sunday morning show on CBS this 2 days ago. But the show, they had a 6-minute segment on me, and Arlene stole the whole show. You guys, you got to go see it, because they asked her one question, and I'm not going to tell you what it was, because you have to experience it. But on the whole show, she had one word, and I won't tell you what the word was, but the result was that I've got all kinds of congratulations on the show, and they had nothing to do with my appearance. They thought that Arlene was great, but she is an exceptional person. She is working in several areas now. She's working on the privacy issue, trying to create a worldwide group that sets standards on privacy, which, if you think about it, we don't have now. So she, as I say, is an exceptional individual, and she probably should be on your show.
Well, we'd love to have her. Maybe next time she'll join you.
Sure.
And it could be really interesting privacy discussion, because of all the most unlikely things, China has just come out with what is probably the best privacy code in the world, as long as we're not talking about the government. We all know the nature of the Chinese government, and they're certainly watching. But their latest legislation that just came out is going to hold back all the Chinese companies doing the things the American companies do, watching us. It's even going to do things like make it illegal for companies to charge poor people more, which is a consequence of some of the algorithmic pricing at a place like Amazon. Really a surprise, but maybe we should be learning some things from China.
Well, I hope you're being sarcastic, because freedom.
No, I'm being absolutely serious. We know the Chinese government, and we know what the Chinese government is like, and it doesn't change that. But what the companies, and remember, they have giant internet companies, can do is going to be severely limited.
Well, I'd rather start from the way we're doing it. Because I think you're right. I think we need some legislation. We need some oversight on the big companies. But I'd rather start from the side of companies being free, and when they cross the line, of course we should fix it. But starting from the part where the government controls what you can say and what you can do is going to hold back the Chinese forever. And I hope that you don't think that we should take that approach. Yes, we need oversight. Yes, we ought to put some controls on Amazon, on Facebook, even on Apple and Microsoft. But it ought to be a mutual thing where the government represents us, and the companies are trying to make money and serve the public at the same time. Sorry about that lecture.
No. You're invited to lecture. We all have our strong opinions, and we've learned different things in different places. But maybe I should take you to Korea. Did you see the New York Times article about the Korean rolls that are coming?
You know, I saw them, but I'm not sure much of it's stuck. But we'll see. Those rules have not been implemented yet, and we're still at a learning stage. I have to agree with you that the technology is getting out of control. A lot of our techies have forgotten that the whole purpose of technology is to make people's lives better. All technology, and when the techies, which I include the three of us, when the techies forget that and become enamored of the technology just for the sake of technology, they're not serving themselves or the public or our future. You just have to keep remembering that technology without people is a curiosity. It's really not technology. It is just a curiosity.
And we've certainly seen lots of unfortunate examples like that. The Korean story is an interesting one. The one that's made it into the Times is that the Koreans want to limit the take that Google and Apple take from everything you do on your mobile phone, including things like subscribing to the New York Times or playing a game. They want to take 30%, which to me seems like too much. And the US is talking about that as an antitrust issue. But there's a problem that the Koreans saying the same thing are getting pushback from the US government, which says they shouldn't set rules for US companies, even when they're working in Korea. So what does the US government do? Does it support our companies? Or does it go forward on something that we ourselves are pushing from our Department of Justice? That was the question. Well, let's talk about technology and progress. What do you think 6G is going to do for us, Marty? Not 5G, 6G. Because a lot of people are talking about that.
Well, let me start by suggesting, I'm really glad I made that comment about technology and people. I'm still suspicious about the emphasis that's being placed on 5G. And that has to do with 5G is focused on the Internet of Things. The infrastructure to support 5G and the Internet of Things is still in the process of being created. So 5G is really not doing much for anybody now. If you read the advertising, they say, oh, well, 5G has huge speed. Well, I don't know when you've had a speed problem, especially the idea of downloading a movie in 30 seconds instead of 3 minutes, because I can't even watch a movie on my cell phone. But the issue of speed is irrelevant for people. If you can get 100 megabits per second, there's not much you can do that will improve you if you gigabit per second. The second thing that 5G ostensibly does is reduce latency. And I don't know, Stu and Dave, when was the last time you had a latency problem on your cell phone? So the thing that we people care about are two things: coverage and cost. And the industry, the coverage is better now than it has been, but it's a tragedy that more than 20% of the people in this country have no service at all. And if you look at the coverage maps, the cover maps are basically wrong. The cover maps exaggerate the amount of coverage, and the carriers still have work to do on the internet of people. So they should be working on both of those. We should have lower cost service so everybody can benefit from accessing the internet, and they have to improve coverage. There are technologies, some of which are already used on 5G, that used on 4G will make those things better, will give us lower cost, will give us better coverage. And that's, I believe, where the carrier should be putting emphasis. 6G, that's a long-range future. Of course, people should be working on 6G, but it's really a question of priorities. The researchers should be working on 6G. The carriers should be working on coverage and cost, and they should be doing 5G as a future business opportunity. At the moment, we are being forced to take the penalty of paying more for our service so that the carriers can get into a new future business. I don't think that's good. I don't know exactly how to solve that problem other than people like us talking about it, and people trying to figure out how to bypass the carriers so that they can get their costs down.
Yeah, you know, Dave and I have talked about that a lot, Marty. Dave has been a big critic of all the 5G hoopla that we've heard for the last year or two. And, you know, I know for myself and so many folks that I work with and know, they'd much rather see, as you mentioned, a lower cost than all these bells and whistles that the carriers are promising with increased performance. I mean, you know, the performance is fine. The network performance is fine, with the exception of perhaps coverage in some places, as you mentioned. But a cost reduction would be much more beneficial, I think, to the population at large. And from what I understand, especially talking to Dave about how the cost for the carriers is just plummeting, the cost for them to use the network is just going down, 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 but they don't pass those savings on to the end user. And instead of giving us cost savings, they keep the cost the same and, you know, promoting new features and more speed and this and that and the other, that for the most part is not a real value add from my point of view.
Well, you know, I agree with you, Stu. The one example of that is millimeter wave, using the 1 gigahertz and higher, or 30 gigahertz and higher. Here is a technology that serves a tiny portion of the public, because the coverage is so narrow that the huge speeds that you get are just totally irrelevant. So, and yet the carriers are making a big issue. At least some of the carriers are, and I don't want to pick on AT&T and Verizon, so I won't mention their names. But they do have millimeter wave sites. I think it's a good experiment. I think it's going to be useful when they have a factory running that has got machines that use the internet, and they need the low latency so that they can respond very quickly to events that are occurring. But for ordinary people, the millimeter waves offers very little benefit.
Well, I had this argument with a couple of dozen of the best engineers in the world. I was on the committee for 6G at the ITU. And I made the argument that 6G, key thing, should be affordability, that we should be concentrating on making sure everybody could be connected. None of the engineers wanted to hear that. They all wanted to talk about how they could make an incredible system, that the latency would go down to less than a millisecond instead of the 20 or 30 milliseconds we have now. And the speeds would go up to numbers that were totally unbelievable. And that was what excited them, even though neither they nor I thought of anything that was likely to happen in the next 10 years from the work that they were talking about. Is that what engineers are usually like? They want to go to the exciting stuff? Marty, you've been in that position.
Yeah, I wanted to get my book just to, so I could, oh, look at this, it's backwards. Oh, that's interesting.
No, it looks fine on my screen. Put it back up, Marty.
One of the, there's a page in the book that is called Marty's Maxims. And one of them is the worst thing that can happen to an engineer is to fall in love with the technology and forgetting that the purpose of technology is going after the people. I think those people that you encountered who are working on 6G, if they are in the research area, I think that's a perfectly good thing to do. But they should not, they should remember that even for the long range future, it is the people that they're serving. And if humanity doesn't gain some advantage, then it's not very good technology. So I want you to know, Dave and Stu, I'm not opposed to 5G. I'm certainly not opposed to 6G. I would like to have the priorities right. And the priorities today, to me, are number one, coverage and cost, because I want to solve the educational problem. I want to solve the healthcare problem, because we don't have healthcare. We got sick care. We wait till people get sick and then try to cure them. I want to get a society to be more efficient, which is the most important thing I think that cell phones do. And to me, those things are the first priority. And the next priority is to go to the next stage after you solve the first one and get business and manufacturing and other aspects of society, the Internet of Things, and that has a high priority long range, because it is going to affect poverty. It's going to bring, hopefully, bring higher wages and a better quality of life to people. And of course, the very long range is, if I'm right about the first two things, the capacity of our systems is going to be limited. And of course, people have to work on 6G, but the issues are not only speed and latency, capacity is the most important one, because just think about it. Our grandchildren, when they do the Stu and Dave show, are going to be looking at 3D, don't you think? And they're going to be using tons and tons of bandwidth. Yes, 6G should be working on those things, but those engineers that you talk to should be thinking about what is the benefit to society? What are they going to do with that before they create it? Because they could be working on the wrong technologies at the wrong time.
But it's exciting to go to terahertz.
You're tweaking. If you keep doing that, Dave, I'm going to start talking about microphones again. So, and audio. But you're right. I would not have written that maxim if I didn't believe it. That engineers tend to do that. they get caught up in the excitement of the problem and forget what the purpose of the solution is. But I apologize for that lecture.
Marty, I like to hear a little bit about your book. Can you tell us, was it just published this past January? And tell us a little bit about it.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, January 5th. The way the book started out, Stu, is I don't think anybody knows how cellular started and how it evolved. And that I wanted to tell that story, and I especially wanted to make sure that people knew about Motorola's contribution to the cellular industry, because the idea of cellular, and I think that your listeners understand that, is the idea of using multiple cells in a city and getting an improvement in the capacity of the radio spectrum. That is the essence of what cellular is. Instead of one antenna in the middle of a city, and you could only use a single radio channel once in a city, you split the city up into this thing that Bell Labs called cells. Huge mistake calling it cellular, because nobody knows what cellular means. But you divide the city up into these cells, and you can use the same frequency over and over again within the city without them interfere with each other. The problem is that at the time the idea came up, which was in 1947, which is at least for some people ancient history. You both were probably born more recently than that. The only way that you could communicate between people was with either radio and TV or car two-way radios. It turns out by the time the Bell system wanted to execute, we knew how to do things with portables, and the Bell system was just unaware of that. And we at Motorola had already had experience. We had the experience of policemen and construction workers out on the job. And we had a far-seeing police commissioner in Chicago who said, my policemen are getting detached from the people. They're sitting in their cars. People are on the streets. I want them out there working with the people. And they can't do that and still communicate. And that's really where the first cellular system came from. We didn't have handoff, but we did have cells in a city, and we did have the policemen out on the streets talking, and that's where we got the lesson. So when Bell System came out and said, well, this cellular is going to be wonderful. We're going to have communications in our cars. Well, people don't want to talk to cars. They don't want to talk to houses. They want to talk to other people. And so we took the Bell System on, and they made it very easy because they did a study with McKinsey asking, what's the market going to be? How many people in the world are going to want car phones? That was the question they asked McKinsey to solve. And McKinsey's answer was about 1 million in the whole world ever. And you want to know something, Stu and Dave? They were right. The most car phones that ever existed in the world was about 1 million. And because, as you know, we took the Bell System on, and we won the battle. And the FCC did two things. They said, number one, there's not going to be a monopoly. It's going to be competitive. And number two, the industry is going to decide what the technology is, be not any one company. And of course, the right answer there was portable technology. So I got off the subject, Stu. That's the story that I want to tell in the book. And that's part of the story. There are 2 chapters on that. But when I got into that, the idea of inventing cellular, I thought was very useful. I would like to inspire our youngsters to take on technical careers, to understand technology, to build on it and create the new things that we need. And so I actually ran through a discussion of my career, how I started out in wireless, started out with elementary kinds of inventions and then worked myself up, paging on the way to the cellular industry. So that's part 2. And part 3 of the book is what the future of cellular is, how it's being used in the world today in ways that we in the developed countries are not even aware of, but it's helping everybody, not just us wealthy people. And I count you and Stu and Dave as the wealthy people. The people that cellular is helping most are the people that are worried about their next meal and that are trying to earn a living and get by. Those are the people in the world that are benefiting the most from cellular and that I think are the most. So those are the things that are discussed in my book, and I hope your readers reach out to me. I ought to do my sales pitch. It is available on Amazon, bookstores, and other places, and in every format that you can imagine. It's in hardcover, ebook, and Audible, and CD.
Cutting the Cord is the title.
How am I doing as a
You're doing great. I just want you to repeat the title a couple of times so that folks can find it.
Yeah.
Cutting the Cord by Martin Cooper. Available on Amazon and all kind of other places. Check it out.
Thank you, Stu.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to take a quick break for station identification, a musical break, and be back. This is Community and Technology with Stu Reid and Dave Burstein. Very special guest today, Martin Cooper, pioneer in the wireless industry and author of the recently published Cutting the Cord. Martin Cooper is the inventor of the cell phone, among other wireless technologies. Stay tuned to WHCR. We'll be right back after this break. Okay, we're back. Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3. I'm Stu Reid. I'm here with my co-host Dave Burstein and a very special guest, pioneer in the wireless industry, Martin Cooper, author of the recently published Cutting the Cord. Welcome back, guys. Please unmute yourselves. Before the break, Martin was telling us about his recent book on the genesis of the cell phone back in the early 70s. And I'm wondering, Marty, did you foresee at all the evolution of the cell phone beyond just a phone? And please unmute yourself, Marty. I muted you during the break. If you could unmute yourself. Just the evolution of the cell phone to the device that it is today, the smartphone, the internet connectivity, and all the things that it does. Did you have any vision of that back in the 70s?
No, we didn't. Stu, excuse me. We were certain that the cell phone would take over communications. We knew that someday everybody would have a cell phone, and that anybody that wanted to talk to somebody else, to a person, would use a cell phone. We had a story that we told them that someday when you were born, let me shut that off. I should have done that in the first place. We had a story that someday when you were born, you would be assigned a phone number, and if you didn't answer the phone, you had died. So we knew that everybody would have a cell phone, but I can't express what primitive times we lived in. They didn't have digital cameras. The internet had not been created yet. The personal computer didn't exist, would you believe? That's how old I am. So they thought that all of these things would be integrated into a phone, that you would have 7 different radios in a smartphone. It was just unimaginable to us. We were struggling trying to put one radio channel into a box that you could carry with you, and the result was this phone.
Wow.
Which weighed over 2 pounds. It had a battery life of 25 minutes of talking, and that was no problem because you couldn't hold this thing up for 25 minutes. So no, we did not anticipate, at least in our lifetime, having smartphones.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've seen quite an evolution in your baby over the last, I guess, 50 years almost.
That's right, but I'd like to add to that I'm not crazy about today's phones, because once again, the designers, the engineers that make these phones are trying to build a product that does all things for all people. And when you do that, you end up being suboptimal for all of the things that the phone does. And so my vision of a future phone is one that is adapted to the individual. You know that every person alive today is different than every person living that has ever lived and that ever will live. Sounds like, that's the closest thing you can come to infinity, is the different possibilities for what a human being is. So the idea that you could give everybody the same phone and say, oh, all you have to do is download the right app and you can customize your phone. And oh, by the way, there are 2 million apps. How do you figure out what the right app for you are? So the phone of the future, I think, first of all, will embrace an artificial intelligence that will examine your habits continuously, because it's your artificial intelligence. And it will look at your personality, and it will, when you need some app that makes you more efficient, it will find an app or will create one for you. So, and furthermore, the hardware of the phone is suboptimal in every respect. You know, just think about it. Here, I got my smartphone is a flat piece of plastic that I got to put against my curved head, hold in this awkward position, which is just as bad as having the, it may not weigh 2.5 pounds, but holding your arm up like this indefinitely is not the easiest thing. And I know what the optimum speaking phone is, because you guys know it as well. The optimum phone would be like an earbud. Maybe it'd be a hearing, an earring for a woman. Maybe it'd be embedded under your skin. And when you wanted to talk, I would say, get Stu on the phone. And they would say, well, which Stu do you want? You know, 200 Stews. And I say, no, the one that lives in New York. And next thing you know, I'm talking to you. And your voice is right in my head. And obviously, we got good coverage and all. So that to me is an optimum phone. And there are optimum ways of doing the other things on the phone. Ultimately, the phone is going to be distributed on your body. You're going to have a server that you carry with you that connects all the devices on your body. Most of them are going to be healthcare devices that are measuring your health on a continuing basis. You'll get a physical exam every few seconds instead of once every year, which I do every 3 or 4 years. So, and physical exams are essentially worthless, because things that happen on your body happen spontaneously, and they happen very quickly. So ultimately, the cell phone will be, first of all, based upon your DNA. What diseases are you subject to? What is your personality? And the future cell phone, it will be customized to you. It will be Stu's cell phone, it will be Dave's cell phone, and everybody will have a different cell phone.
Now that sounds like a real intelligent device there, Marty.
Well, that's the way, with the direction we're going now. Okay. The artificial intelligence is just starting to be available, but the computing power that it takes to create artificial intelligence that you carry with you exists. You could now put what 5 years ago we called a supercomputer, now could be in a single smartphone. So the idea of having artificial intelligence is certainly, and having it being cost effective is certainly true.
Dave, you want to chime in here? I think your phone is on mute, Dave.
Dave, your mouth is moving.
Dave, unmute your phone, Dave. We can't hear you, Dave, but we're trying to get Dave Burstein here. This is Community and Technology. Dave?
According to my screen, your phone is muted.
Okay, we're talking with Marty Cooper, inventor of the cell phone, about technology, and he just laid out some really fascinating vision as to where the cell phone, we hope, may evolve to, i.e. a really intelligent device that is really matched to who we are and what our needs are, rather than requiring us to plow through 1 million or 2 apps and figuring out what to use and what makes sense for us. And I so much look forward to that reality, whenever that is, a true smartphone. And as Marty also said, it's going to be probably tied in to our biology and our body chemistry and our body functionality, such that it's monitoring our well-being on a real-time basis, as opposed to the going to the doctor once every 3 months for a checkup. You're getting real-time evaluation and monitoring of all of your systems. So that's...
Well, you know what, Stu, I think the role of an engineer in very general terms is to make things more efficient. Because we are so inefficient at everything that we do today that there's amazing opportunities. You want to just talk about energy itself. We know what the most efficient way to create energy is. It's the way the sun does it. The sun takes two hydrogen atoms, it squeezes them together, it produces a helium atom and a huge amount of energy. We are so far away from that in the way we do things today. You know, we burn coal, we burn natural gas, even solar panels are relatively inefficient compared to that. So we're going to learn how to do that ultimately, but at least it gives us a standard of where we go. And I'll give you another example, which is the way we reject elements of our society. The most common one is to take 50% of our society, the women, and say women are deficient. The men are the ones that are going to rule the world, and only men can become engineers, and only men can be executives. That's the world that I grew up in. Fortunately, that was 90 years ago. Things have changed a great deal, but that's still true. That's basically inefficient. And it's inefficient to take any class of society and say that this class is either different or incapable of doing something. We need the resources of all of society, regardless of what their sex, religion, color, or all those things. So I have a very different view of what engineering is than a lot of engineers. A lot of engineers are caught up, as I keep repeating, and I apologize for being repetitious, too, that they get hung up. They think that engineering, they think that technology is doing something different and more complicated. And I don't believe that. I think that that good technology could be intuitive. It always makes people's lives better. That's why by the subtitle of my book is How the Cell Phone Transformed Humanity, because humanity is the issue. So that's the future that I embrace, and I hope the world keeps moving like that. You don't have to get more efficient before you can make everybody in the world, if not wealthy, well-to-do. And that's the dream. And if you carry that to the extreme, there is no reason why generations from now, that's not going to happen next year or in a single generation, but there's no reason why 10 generations from now, our great, 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 great grandchildren can't all be rich. That's how inefficient we are today. So that's the vision that I have for the long-range future, and that's what I think engineers should be working on. I think that they should be working on real problems with real solutions. I'm not crazy about the idea of having electrical engineers and mechanical engineers and medical engineers. It turns out engineers are problem solvers. And yes, they may have specialties, but the specialties are not based upon some silo like electrical engineer. They're based upon what the nature of the problem is. First, understand the problem, and then figure out what the technology is to do that. So I keep apologizing to you, Stu, for getting on soapbox, but you can tell that I'm passionate about these things.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I wanted to hear. That was going to be my kind of wind up question, where you see the future of technology, 10, 20 years, 30 years down the road, where's it going to go? And you just laid out a really compelling vision as to what it should be doing. I see Dave is back. Dave, you want to have any final comments or questions with Marty? We just got a couple minutes left on the broadcast.
Marty, what do you think of the Motorola phones today?
Well, I feel very bad about Motorola in general. And by the way, that's one of the things that's covered in the book. I do talk about how Motorola was a leader in many, many ways, not only with the cell phone, but the land mobile industry, and even in how you run a company. The luckiest thing ever happened to me was signing up at Motorola, which, by the way, was accidental. But I stayed there for 29 years, and I learned an enormous amount at that company. Motorola, as you know, now is a Chinese company. They're trying very hard to be different. I still appreciate some of the things they're doing. I have a Motorola, their latest flip phone that has a foldable screen. That wasn't, in my view, too successful. Samsung's now trying the same thing. So I appreciate the fact that they are trying to do things differently. The thing about that I feel about Motorola, I feel about the industry as a whole. Dave, we need more competition in the industry. The idea that that Apple and Samsung have a huge share of market is I think terrible. I think there ought to be many different kinds of phones appealing to different kinds of people. Apple's doing a good job now, but I'm convinced that people like Motorola, who are still reaching out, trying to doing different things. Samsung is trying doing different things. So is Apple. But at some point, they are going to get so complacent. They are going to get so enamored of their magnificent position in society that some small company is going to come along with some feature that they invented, and we'll get some competition. And that's the way that we're going to get to that future phone that I was describing earlier. You didn't expect to get another lecture like that, did you, Dave?
I invited you because I like listening to your lectures, sir.
Right.
And show me a Chinese company is actually passing Samsung and Apple in sales the last quarter. Not with something more original. It's basically a marketing play in the fact that they offer an excellent phone for a lot less money. They're number one in Europe and India right now, and of course China, which is by far the biggest market.
Well, that's one of the reasons that Motorola was upended, because Motorola was building most of the cell phones in the world, and then Nokia came around, and their focus was on manufacturing, getting the cost down. So history is repeating, and I think the same thing is going to happen with other things than cost. And Apple and Samsung better be looking behind them and working hard to stay in front. And who will benefit? We will. But we really need more competition. I think this competition is one of the most important things in our society. And it's the thing that is the biggest handicap that people like the Chinese have, that they are convinced that they got a medal. And if you look at, our democracy is not perfect. In fact, it's got all kinds of flaws, but we do have a system that is self-organizing. We are aware of the flaws. We work hard at them, and competition is one of our strong motivations. We have a balance. We try to achieve a balance of government intervention as compared with companies doing their own thing. And I think, as I say, we're far from being perfect, but at least there is that struggle to optimize, to make things better for the people. And it's based upon not some dictator's opinion or some engineer's opinion. It's based upon what the market responds to. What's the best for most people?
Okay, well,
said by a man.
Dave, I think we got to wind up. We're about out of time. I want to thank Martin Cooper, inventor, pioneer, and author of Cutting the Cord, available on Amazon and bookstores everywhere. Thank you, Marty, for joining us on Community and Technology.
Great pleasure, Stu, to meet you. Great to see you again, Dave. And anytime you want to talk some more, I'm on the case. You guys are great interviewers.
Thank you. We look forward to it. Thank you, Marty. This is Community and Technology. Stu Reid, Dave Burstein, signing off till next Wednesday at 5 p.m. This is WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Thanks for tuning in.